Do you always wonder how you can prevent injuries for your cheerleaders? Are you wondering how to train them so that they perform optimally no matter what situation they're in? Then you're going to want to listen to this episode of Move Better with a Cheer PT. In this episode, I interview the amazing Corey Jung from Upright Movement, and we talk about incorporating the different senses into our regular training routines and ways to do that in practice and in your everyday exercise routine as well. This is a great episode. I hope you enjoy it. There are some technical difficulties. You know, the age of internet, we had some connection problems. And while I love helping people feel better, move better in their body, and that's what I do as a physical therapist and a personal trainer, I'm not so technical on fixing videos. I'm working on it, and it's a new skill that I'm learning because we have to keep learning every day. So bear with those technical difficulties through the video. If you'd rather listen to this on a podcast, there is a little bit better editing on that, and you can check that out on whatever platform you listen to your podcast on. It is Move Better with the Cheer PT. I'm Laura Turner, I'm Doctor of Physical Therapy, and I'm a personal trainer and strength coach, and I help cheerleaders and cheer moms create the best environment for their cheerleaders to stay healthy and stay active on the mat all the time. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and continue to listen and watch for other episodes because we've got some great people coming up and great content. And if you check it out on the podcast, then I hope you also like and subscribe. Share it with somebody who might benefit from this also. I hope you have a great day, and let's get on with the show.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Move Better at Home with the Cheer PT podcast. And today I have with me Corey Jung from Northern California. And Corey and I had a wonderful conversation back in January of 2021. And I'm excited to follow back up and talk more about movement and natural movement and creating good mobility in our bodies. So welcome back. Thank you for joining me again. I appreciate it. How have you been?
Thank you very much. Good. And you? It's good to see you.
You too. So tell me what's new in your world as far as movement-wise goes, and what you're exploring these days.
What's new? It's ongoing. It's ongoing. You know, of the many things on the list, right now with your question, what's coming up for me right away is the senses. The visual senses, the hearing senses, the smell senses, the touch senses, the homunculus, for instance, right? And the sensory motor cortex. And so a lot of people are focusing on movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all good, but it's inclusive. And then if you look at that term, that region of the brain, the sensory motor cortex, it's described as such, sensory motor. It's not described motor sensory. And then another thing would be feeling safe within one's body, in interoception and the autonomic nervous system, and all the things.
I think we may have touched on some of that in our last conversation, but I think we tend to. I find this all the time in the clinic, and with especially so if I'm working with cheerleaders, like the sensory awareness of what their body's doing. I think, and take away even just cheerleading, but all of us kind of go through our day and plow through and don't actually take a moment to sense what we're feeling, to take those 5 senses, 6 senses, whatever, to incorporate and be, hey, how's this affecting that? And how is what I'm feeling outside of the body, not necessarily outside the body, but affecting how my movement is going, and how my emotions are affecting how my movement is, and how that really plays into that. Do you find that with your clients as well?
Yes. I feel that there's just, I don't know if you recall from our last conversation, there's a bit of a mismatch, I would say, as far as our environment and then the environment that our species and many species for that matter have been naturally wired to. We live in a bit of a world of our own making and not so much that of nature, but then our body is more that of nature. And so I feel that's not helpful. And then technology, and then it's kind of interesting since we are using technology to do this,
Right.
for instance. But what's the old saying? The poison's in the dose. And having this awareness of our body, and then the multitudes of the human body, and that it's just not, we're not just parts and pieces. It's not just skeletal musculature, right? It's, I would say that's more on the periphery, the tip of the iceberg, the 10% or so. And then what's beneath that tip, the vast majority of that is beneath the ocean floor, for instance. And so the senses, the organs, the hormones, um, the glands, the cells, the list goes on. You mentioned emotions, right? With
Yes. Yeah.
so after a session with a person, and I don't call them training sessions so much. I'm leaning more towards something like that. Of it's a movement lesson. It's a movement exploration. We could even call it play, but generally after you know some movement, I would ask the person, you know, what felt good? What did what did you enjoy? What felt good, and what did you learn from the activity? And bring it back. And I think we were talking about interoception. So if people really have a good this inner sense of themselves, I feel that helps with one's autonomy, uh, especially self-efficacy.
Hmm.
You have the power, the innate power of your own body's ability to adapt and to heal. And I think that's huge.
Yeah. And I think, look, I think we have, sadly, we have to relearn how to listen to that, and
Mm.
to be okay with saying this, you know, doesn't feel good. So I don't want to do that. And let's try a different movement or try something else that does feel better. And I think that we because we want, things are supposed to be done in a certain way, we just keep pushing ahead. And then we get stuck in a pattern and we don't ever find a better way to move. And it just creates a big cycle, of pain or of dysfunction or whatever that might be. Um, so do you find that, I think my question is, do you have tools that you use to help explore some of that movement? Or is it more, just letting them, do a single leg stance or squat with a TRX and playing with how that feels, and can they adjust to how that feels? Like, how do you incorporate that into getting them to learn what feels good, what doesn't feel good, do you use outside tools? Do you just use regular movement patterns? Do you get outside and do stuff? Is it a combination of everything?
Yeah, and I think it depends. It depends on the person, it depends on the task, and it depends on the environment. And I also feel, yeah, it could depend day by day, per individual. Like, how is their previous evening's sleep, for instance? And how is their overall bucket, we might say, when it comes to stress? How's their health? How's their relationships? I mentioned sleep, food. And so let's just say that perhaps there could be one or a number of those things, and we could probably have other items assigned to that bucket as well. But let's just say there's one or a few or all of them are a bit suboptimal. Um, then I wouldn't be surprised that their autonomic nervous system is a little bit more fight or flight, sympathetic. And so I would imagine they're a little bit more sensitive to how they feel, and their perception. A lot of times I would ask the person to really pause, take a moment and breathe, and ask themselves a question. Is it what I'm feeling? Is it a real threat? Do I think that there's some damage, injury, threat to my survival going on? Or is it a challenge? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is this a legitimate threat, or is it a challenge? I'll use the term tiger. Like, is there a real tiger in the room, or is this perhaps more of a false tiger? You know, and I'll let them to investigate that for themselves and determine which one of those is the case. A lot of times, what I'll have them do in addition to that, what is it? Yeah, this imagination that we're kind of putting ourselves through is shift your senses. You know, zoom in something narrow and then zoom in something wide. Take in the panorama. Be mindful again of your breathing. Uh, feel your body. Feel the skin, feel the bones, feel the shape. Even like maybe I'll offer sometimes people to smell something. I'll give them like an essential oil to focus more on that. So it's like a shift of state, by way of the shifting of the senses, that helps. And then my room, well, when I did have my room set up, it was very sensory rich with Naboso mats, tactile and all those things. And then as far as a pattern goes, like I usually work with like this, so position, pattern, and performing a particular task. And like so we're picking a theme. And so if things aren't feeling all that great with a particular pattern within the supine, okay, how might that feel when we explore it from the sideline or the prone? You know, we're not fixed just to one. We can focus on one, but we allow ourselves room for variability within that one position or pattern. Let's just say.
That's a great way to uh, encourage failure for the body, and in a good way. It's a good way. It's a great way to put some stimulation into cerebellum from motor learning. Because maybe it doesn't feel good, but it's pretty easy in lying on your back. But then you flip over and it's like you don't have an awareness of how to move in that way. It feels better, but it doesn't, your body has to take a little bit to learn how to do that. And then that can carry over into whatever, goes on further down the chain, or upright. But I think that's a great way to encourage a motor learning as well as a sensory learning, because all of that feedback is the sensory system is going to help the motor learning too. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get stuck, I think, on, well, this exercise we're going to do lying down and sitting, but I don't necessarily flip into prone to do it. And they'll do a different exercise prone, but not, so I think that it's a good reminder for me too. And I like,
I like the very,
go ahead.
No, you like what now?
That you use the different, the very, like you incorporate different smells, or, the essential oils, and reminding people to focus wide, focus small. In cheer, we tend to be like, okay, keep your eyes focused on one spot and, just get up there and hold tight, like if you're a flyer. But I think if we could train to, and I think it has to be under a controlled environment, not necessarily in the midst of competition, but, as you're training, like, okay, get up and like, notice what's around you without necessarily moving a whole lot, but notice what's around you and take a bigger view of it. And then let that incorporate and sometimes do the smaller view, and changing the, because the smells are going to be different in every environment you go in. So, throwing those in, or noise, we tend to have our music super loud, and like loud, fast, quick, and, lots of heavy beats and we're all yelling. But what happens if it's quiet? Can we do the same thing if it's quiet? If your music goes out, can you do the same thing? So training under those environments will help you to be able to access them when you need them. And that's specific with cheer, but I think in everyday life too, like we forget that we're not always in the same environment. If we are, we need to start to move and expand that a little bit because our perception narrows. But so I like that you do that and incorporate that, because I don't think a lot of us do that in everyday life or in therapy necessarily.
No, I agree from what I've seen. And as far as the mainstream fitness offerings out there, via the YouTube, for instance, I haven't noticed a great bit of that either. What's coming to my mind is variability. It's like,
Yeah.
how many ways can I do the same thing differently? And I think that really broadens one's bandwidth, let's just say. And because things quite often, especially in everyday life, in nature, things are a little bit more there's a lot more variability that occurs quite often outside of the constructs of humans' particular makings.
Right.
And then I feel that the human body is designed, and perhaps I would say even thrives variability. And I feel variability kind of plays into resilience.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I was just
and
thinking
I think it gives them confidence too. I think it gives people a huge confidence, like, oh, I've done this so many different ways successfully that I'm good. I'm plastic. I can adapt. I'm not just just narrowly fixed. In a very tight confine.
And if you take that strictly to a structure point, that allows your body to move in many different ways, so that if you roll your ankle, a little bit, it's, if you don't have that variability and you don't have the ability to take your ankle through a full range of motion or a different range of motion, it's more likely to create a sprain and an injury per se. But if you train in a way that is taking and I use ankle as an example, but any body part, and allow it to go through different movements and get it used to doing that in a safe way, like you were talking about, and what feels right, and it's going to have more ability to take on various surfaces, movement patterns, and adapt to that variability as well. So training for variability helps for variability and various activities also. How do you, because consistency is, it's big in the training world, and being consistent with your diet, being consistent with your workouts, and, making sure that you're, doing things consistently, getting up at the same time, having a routine. But how can you blend the two of those? Like, there's got to be a way to blend some consistency in with the variability and then keep making progress. And
are you asking in regards to like training, like in the training room, the conventional training room, for instance?
Well, yes, but just in even, like there is something to be said for creating good, healthy, consistent habits, going to bed at the same time, eating the right foods on a consistent basis, and whatever the right foods may be, and having a regular workout routine or movement routine. Doesn't have to be a workout, but that is consistent, because your body knows that it needs to do that. So my thought is, yes, we have to because we need to do things regularly. We need to be consistently doing something to create those habits and those healthy routines. But in those routines, you create the variability and move from there. I think I get stuck on like, well, how often should I change what I do every single day? And should I, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, a few things that come to my mind, and I hope this is answering your question, but yeah, as far as sleep, you mentioned sleep, right?
Yeah.
I would like that to be pretty consistent, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a matter of entrainment, and we want to stick to a pretty consistent schedule. you know, Maybe it's around 3 hours or so post sunset, and then it's for a time period of 8 to 10 hours, and we want a good quality as far as having very few wakeful moments throughout the night, and we want to be able to sleep relatively quickly, and we want to have all the important waves of sleep and deep and REM sleep and for growth hormone release and whatnot. But I would like that to be pretty consistent
Right.
rather than an erratic sleep schedule. I would say food, uh, variety of food, I feel would be good. And then like, you know, even if we had consistent macros, if people are into that, X amount protein, X amount fat, X amount of carbohydrates, or maybe they're just kind of looking at their plate and they're saying, okay, a portion of my plate's going to look like this from animal proteins and fat, and the other portion of my plate's going to look like this, you know, fats and carbs and whatnot. But then, so those might be consistent, but then within that consistency, oh, I can have let's say that maybe the person has a subscription through a CSA, like a farm share,
Yeah.
and they're going to get whatever is in season locally that farmer's providing. A lot of times that's going to offer a lot of variety. So then we can have, was it, yeah, variety, variability throughout the season, from that example. And then we can still be consistent as far as our macros, or relatively, consistent-ish, you
Right.
know, unless we're, weighing and measuring and everything. But I feel that's not exactly healthy and probably takes the joy of food out of the equation too. Um, so that's one idea when it comes to that. And then, you can have consistency within the training room. Um, Maybe we're focusing on a strength phase or a power phase, but then how many ways can we, and then there's the regions of the body and the pushing and the pulling and all that. So we can be consistent to, what's the main theme, strength, power, what is the theme for today? Pulling, push, excuse me, pulling or pushing. But then we can have a variety as far as, okay, what are we doing today when it comes to pushing and pulling? We could break it up like that. I mean, this is just an idea. And then maybe we could have maybe more of a conventional. Let's say we're doing 2 to 3 days on and then 1 day off or so, or however the program is for us during the week. We could have maybe half and half. Half of the week is conventional, and the other half of the week is a little bit more novel. Or we could have 3 weeks where it's conventional. Everything's kind of like I'm I don't necessarily subscribe to this model, but you might be familiar, and some other people might be familiar with this model. The model is that of the bigger, faster, stronger model. Does that ring a
Mhm.
bell?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just say that we're using that model for three weeks out of the month, and then we leave the fourth week of the month to more of variability.
Right.
These are just some thoughts when it comes to, okay, can I blend consistency and variability at the same time?
Right. I think that's great. And I think the big takeaway is we need to have more variability in our life, and incorporate that into our health fitness routines. And we have to be consistent. And that how that plays in may vary per where you're at. And maybe you play with a different type of movement pattern, screen, exercise routine for a certain period of time, but you're consistent with that for X amount of time. And then you mix it up again. And so we're not constantly doing the same exact movements all the time. I think that's a key with training in general, like being able to change our, like we know that like our body adapts after 4 to 6 weeks. We kind of like, it just gets used to doing what it's doing. So you won't see those changes. So even if it's a matter of, okay, at least every 4 to 6 weeks, I want to change up what I'm doing and how I'm doing it to be able to keep the growth coming in, and adding in some different surfaces, changing your perspective of it, changing how you're doing it, can keep that variability in there to keep you making progress also, and challenging your cerebellum basically to learn and to adapt to new movement patterns.
No, this could be very fun and creative. I mean, some other ideas that just came to my mind is that you mentioned different surfaces. Maybe one time we're training barefoot. Maybe the other time we're keeping our shoes on. Maybe one time we're on a sensory-rich mat like Naboso. Maybe one time instead of using the barbell, we're using for
Say that again for me.
even play around with the senses. Maybe one take now.
Say that again for me if you can.
Laura, you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Laura?
I'm here.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me? Oh,
I can hear you now. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
yep. You keep coming in and out too.
Uh-oh.
There we are.
You can hear me.
Yep. Now you're blinking. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll clip that out.
Geez, here. Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna say that. Good. So repeat what you just said. Yeah. We had talked about being barefoot.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So different, yeah. So different surfaces, barefoot, shoes, tactile rich surfaces, on our feet, on our hands, using materials such as Naboso. Hell, we could keep it to the same type of lift, a barbell, but then switch the barbell for a reservoir filled with water. So then that mass, even if it's the same weight, is constantly shifting and changing. And we could even change things in regards to our senses. And I imagine we want to do things with good quality and be sound and not get too, you know, far out there as far as our abilities. But we could use an eye patch, bias one eye, bias the other eye, bias one ear, you know, uh, it's endless, right? Where you could go with this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool because you don't think to do that. And I think in whether you're training at home or you're training in a facility or you're training in rehab or in your actual sporting, I think it's good to include that. Obviously, when you have a big group of people, you have to contain it a little bit, but but I think there's ways to be able to add that in on an everyday basis too. So, or in a regular ongoing basis, I guess, not every day, but what I just lost my thought. I looked at a quote that you had written on Facebook about fitness in general, and fitness is the ability to consistently thrive and function within the demands of your environment. And I think that feeds into, you know, the different trainings, because if we always train in one environment, then that's great. We can be great in that environment, but we need to be adaptable to other environments. So I like that train of thought. And that went into also a different post, I think, with Feldenkrais, and it said that what I'm after isn't flexible bodies, but flexible brains, and then to restore each person to their human dignity, to be able to create movement that restores to your human dignity. And I think that feeds into the pain management end, and like being, you know, remembering that where our bodies originated from and how we used to move, and incorporating that into, you know, and being able to get back to that, because we were born with pretty perfect movement patterns for the most part, you know.
Right. I mean, I would say the majority of us today, the majority of us going back hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps, like you said, like we were successful. And if we weren't successful when it comes to this, our species would not have made the long journey into where we are today. And every other species as well, I would say, who's present with us today. And when you see other life out in nature, 9 times out of 10, yeah, they're doing good. They're thriving within their environment. What comes to my mind is that it's the environmental evolutionary adaptedness. So we're designed for variability. You know, if you look at our species, we literally marched to all four corners of the globe over thousands, tens of thousands of years time period, and in various migrations. And so our body, I would say other species body in their way, we're the first and foremost all-terrain vehicle. You know,
Yeah.
we did this primarily early on as a species through upright bipedalism. And there was probably a few things that we're able to carry as individuals and then collectively, but the feet, they were probably protected, a thin layer of hide, protecting against abrasions in particular. But other than that, there wasn't much support as far as the structure of the shoe. Well, some type of covering of the feet, and then having good hip mobility, for instance, right? Because there was no furniture back then. And then if you did step on something and cut yourself or stepped on a thorn, you had to have the ability to have your leg in a position by way of the hip in order to inspect and care for your feet. Because if you didn't, that probably could have been really bad. So yeah, this is a birthright.
Yeah.
And I would say, and I feel a lot of times rehab in some ways could also be seen as a means of restoring this innate ability of the body as far as its ability to adapt and heal and function. We're not as, I feel sometimes it seems to me that people have a sense of their bodies as being delicate. Perhaps at times, but I would say overall, the human body as a whole, the legacy of our species is that we're pretty darn resilient, and that I would feel that when we give the body what it has been adapted to, that and we remove the bottlenecks, that naturally that comes back to us. I feel some of the what is it, the frailness that some people feel about their bodies isn't just the muscle. It could be a matter of the overall system, and that, the system is that of, and so what else is going on or not going on within their body? That's a system of systems. How's their digestion? How's their hormones? How's their autonomic nervous system? How's their mental emotional state? And yeah, the relationship that they have with their body. And movement is basically interaction with their environment. So not only what's their relationship with themselves, what's their relationship with their environment that they're moving and interacting within. These are the many thoughts that I have throughout the
Right.
day.
This could lead to a big rabbit hole, but well, actually, I think you answered my question. That we have adapted ourselves to live in the environments that we are in, and through evolution, whatever time periods and internet and everything that has kind of progressively got us into a walls of four walls and a chair, and a TV or a computer. Is there a way to go back, and do we want to go back? I
Right.
I think it's huge that we have the technology that we have, and I certainly don't want to give it up by any means, but I think what your point being is that we find these bottlenecks. We bottleneck that we have to be at our desk all the time, and so how can we create movements to open that bottleneck up and allow things to move easier? And on top of that, remembering that our body is it's not just I get asked frequently, like, what caused this, and why is my why did this happen? And this, if they ask it much more eloquently, but why do I feel this way? And truthfully, it's not always just a musculoskeletal problem. There's a lot that goes into it, like you said. And remembering that, I think, or learning that, can be a huge driver for getting rid of that bottleneck and taking ownership to be able to create better movement, so you don't get stuck in that pattern, and your movement does improve, so that you are not limited in what you're doing anymore. But I think we forget that, and I'm not sure we can fully get rid of the things that get us stuck at this point in life, because I think that we are in a it's just our lifestyle.
The connection.
Yes, yeah, it
Okay,
keeps coming. Yeah, I don't know if we can completely get rid of the bottlenecks, because life is what it is right now. We have to find ways to, like a river, water's going to make its way down the hill, no matter what obstacle it puts in its way, but finding ways that are better, that are not just going to create dysfunction, but that are going to create better pathways, even through the obstacles of sitting at your desk or whatever that might be, or poor internet connection. So, did I lose you again?
Okay.
There,
all right. I think maybe the sound's better.
Hello? There you are.
Okay. Okay. So what is sorry, I know
it's
the internet, but so what was your question now, Laura? I think you were mentioning given that we're in the 21st century and we have these ancient bodies.
Yeah. And is it rational to think that we could go back to that, or we should try to go back to that? And are there ways to incorporate that, given where we are today in the 21st century?
Well, I have a few ideas, and just to be kind of short, because be mindful of time. I would say look at the, I can remove more. It's like addition through subtraction. And I think our connection once again.
Yeah, there we are now.
Oh.
You're on. It's gonna be a good editing.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Addition, so addition through subtraction is one idea.
Yeah.
So I like the 4 pillars, and you're probably familiar with this from Exos. You know, the pillars of mindset, of recovery, of nutrition, and movement.
Yeah.
Right? And within the Exos model, they say something along the lines that, you know, if you want to upgrade anything, sport, life, work, really at the center of that is to upgrade behavior, thoughts, actions, and habits. So I would look at what are the things that might be getting in the way of my desired goal. I'd like to start to minimize obstacles first prior to adding in addition. So it's addition through subtraction.
Yeah.
I feel for a lot of people that's easier, because I often do hear from people that they have a lot going on, too much going on. I don't have time. I don't have the energy to, you know, do another thing on top of my schedule. So maybe do an inventory as far as like, you know, what are the things that aren't really essential to the success outcome of my desired goals, from my thoughts, actions, habits, mindset, you know, recovery and sleep, introspection, and then nutrition, and then movement. Now, you know, movement wise, we do what we do. We like what we do, and we're often pretty good at the ones that we do often and we like, right?
Right.
Some position patterns where I might be a little deficient in, and maybe start to consider playing and exploring and starting to develop some of those things. And I would definitely see uh, how can we maybe incorporate a little bit more nature in our schedule as well. Nature, healthy social connections, you know, real people, real face to face.
Right.
Uh, I would even say, you know, social connections with one's pet, you know, family, loved ones. Pets often are people's families as well, because I feel that there's maybe a little bit of an excess of these virtual connections. Um, these are just a few quick ideas when it comes to, you know, can we blend some of the old with the new?
Right.
And and another thing, as far as movement wise, I did say spending time in nature. So, you know, maybe do a little bit more hiking or running that you might do normally on a treadmill or on the sidewalk, but take it more on into a natural, stable surface environment, nature. And then as far as your pulling activities, maybe play around with some climbing, bouldering.
Great tips and advice for incorporating that where we were to where we are, and including different certain, you know, also wrapping that around to senses, because by changing your environment to outside or to bouldering or you know, you're also adding different sensory awareness into your body. So we're gonna wrap up. I wanted to touch also. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm not sure if you can hear and see me.
Laura?
Hi, there you are. Nope. I think we may have lost. Yep. Oh, there you are. You there? Came in there.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up. The one, the other piece that I
Well, I
had,
thought we were back.
we are. Well, you're kind of back.
Yeah. I'm back. Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay.
Oh, fun. This is why in person is better. The last thing I wanted to just touch on, and then we'll wrap up. So you had another quote about gravity and how gravity wins and landings hurt. And I can't read my writing, but gravity is it's a law. It happens. I got called out. My team got called out on a fall one time when I was coaching cheer, and now falls hurt, and they didn't really talk about gravity, but that's part of the process. Imbalance is that gravity will affect that. Can you just quickly touch on how gravity will necessarily, or incorporate gravity into a balance discussion, or how we can work on that to when we're on an uneven surface per se, or something that gravity might be calling us down, but how we can train our bodies. And we have talked about that with the variability in different surfaces, but do you have anything else to add on that as far as a healthy tip?
Okay, so being more successful within the pull of gravity, and with the intent of maintaining uprightness or being more successful with landings back on the surface of the earth. Is that right?
Yeah.
So the few ideas that come to my mind is if we are in a upright position and we want to maintain our uprightness and gravity and our task and whatever else is happening that's trying to do the opposite of that, I would say, besides just focusing on don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, which is obvious. So that would be like, okay, I'm pushing the ground because I'm opposing gravity that's pulling me, for instance. So having a good sense of your pelvis. So like the domes, for instance. So are the domes stacked? So how is the dome of the roof of my mouth stacked over the dome of my diaphragm, stacked over the dome of my pelvic floor, and stacked over the other dome, that of the arch of my foot, for instance. So I'm thinking about, okay, is everything nicely stacked and weight distribution and full foot contact with the ground? And I'm thinking of my foot similar to that of a pizza slice over a globe. So I want the point of the heel. I mean, imagine a pizza slice, kind of like a triangle. So you got the heel, you got the big toe, you got the pinky toe, and you want to maintain what is it, convexness to our feet, right? They're like this leaf springs, the suspension system. That's the one, I would say, principle. And then maybe when we're doing drills and practice, that maybe we want to play around with the variability as far as the position of our head, right? Can I maintain balance while my neck is slightly tilted to one side because I'm going to be stimulating the vestibular system a little bit that way, a little bit of the ocular system because my eye position is going to be my head position is going to be a little bit different relative to the horizon. I can even bias an eye, eye patch here, eye patch there. Um, and just be able to do that successfully while practicing, rehearsing, so that when life does happen, as well Laura,
Yeah. So I lost you on
Laura,
when life, like
Laura, are you there?
the last I heard was when life does happen.
Yeah, so I guess when life does happen, when we've practiced and played around with some of these variations that we've had the experience, and so mentally, emotionally, we're kind of prepared, like, oh, this is just another walk in the park, and I'm
Right.
good because
Right.
I've been successful with this in the past. For
Right.
instance, these are just some, yeah, and I guess in addition to the domes, have a really sense of the other aspects of your body, the bones, the joints, and the skin. So like if you're doing this within an upright neutral spine, have a sense of like, oh, how does my skin feel upon my cervical region, my thoracic region, and my lumbar region, and maybe even the clothes that I wear, especially during the event. And that if I feel that my skin has a little bit more tightness or slack, as well as the clothes upon my body, then I have a little bit of a sense that perhaps my spine and the domes are not quite stacked and neutral. So I have this now, I have this, we could say it's tactile cueing in a way, and that this tactile cueing is telling me that I'm a little bit outside of optimal as far as being tight to one's axis of rotation, you know?
Yep.
Um, yeah, these are just a few ideas
No,
to
I
help
think that,
as mhm.
yeah, those are awesome. And I think I'm going to include some of those in my, when I get into the office with my clients today, just, teaching them different positions to be able to feel a
What's
body.
that,
And
Laura?
I'm going to incorporate all of that stuff into my own practice for myself, but also in teaching for my clients as we go in today, as I go into work today. So that's awesome. Do you have anything coming up that you want to share with people in your own practice? Do you have anything coming up in your own practice that's or in your own business that's coming up that you want to share?
Okay. Do I have
Do you have anything that you want to share for your own that's coming up that you have going on in the upcoming months?
well, currently what I'm up to is, having good conversations like you and I, and just, sharing this information with people. I have a few guests, and then available to work with it for workshops and mentorships if people are interested. So
Awesome.
that's the latest as far as what I'm up to.
Well, get me that information and we'll post that in all the show notes and share it out. Tell me the best way to reach you.
The best way to reach me, my website, social media. I'm out there, and I will share the information
Yeah,
with you again. But yeah, uprightmovement.com.
perfect. Yeah,
If
I have all
Google
that.
that,
Yeah. And it's got great stuff on Instagram and lots of different ways to incorporate this movement into your daily routine also. So Instagram or Facebook, but I will share all that info. Thank you so much for joining me today again, Corey. And sorry everybody for the internet connection issues that happen through life. And it just keeps our variability going, keeps us learning as we go.
right?
I hope you have a great day. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take it one step at a time, and we'll see you next time. All right, let's see how we